what an honor to be here with you guys. It's been great. I had to spend the day relaxing, and it was really hard. So if you see me yawn when I'm talking, it's because I'm entirely too relaxed. But it really has been a great day, and I love this area. I love this. What an inspiration to do this outside and to do your services outside. Pastor Chad told me the story last night of how this all transpired, and it's really a God thing. And so I'm really honored to be here. I will tell you very, very briefly a couple about these books that I brought with me. One is called I Have Issues, and this is for, and I do, this is written for women who are in ministry. I'm getting ready to do an edit and rewrite this one, and I'm going to include a chapter on widowhood, and I'll tell you that story in a little bit. And then this book was the last book that was written by Randy. It's called Betrayed. And it takes the stories, or takes the 10 Commandments and talks about every one. You may not even know this, but every one of the 10 Commandments is about betrayal. And whether you betray your wife, you betray your neighbor, you betray the businessman, you betray anyone by lying or cheating or stealing or whatever, it's about betrayal. And it's not just about the 10 Commandments, but it's about how to walk through betrayal and the difference between betrayal and failure. There is a difference. So anyway, brought this one. This is the last one. This is Tapestry. This one was just released in July. And this is the story of Randy Valimont that we wrote. We started the book 3 weeks before Randy died. And I'll never forget, we sat down. We were supposed to be in Washington, D.C., and we sat down the night before we were I started packing, and Randy said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm packing. I can't just throw a pair of underwear in the suitcase and go like you can. I need to plan." And he said, "We're not going to go." I said, "Okay." So I started taking things out of the suitcase. He said, "No, leave them in there. We're going to go over to the lake, and we're going to hash out this book." And so I said, "Okay." So we sat down and started writing the book, or I started writing the book as he dictated what he wanted in the book. And I said, "Well, one of the first things that we have to talk about is, what are you going to call this book?" And he said, "Tapestry, a story of adoption, acceptance, and destiny." And I said, "Wow, you've been thinking about this." And he said, "No, the Lord just gave it to me." And and he was like that. He just, that's just the kind of person he was. So I sat down, I wrote the first chapter and handed it to him, printed it out, handed it to him and said, "Here's the first chapter." And he said, "Jelly, this reads like a woman wrote it." I said, "Really?" I did. And he said, "But I don't want it to read like a woman wrote it. I want it to read like a man wrote it." And I said, "Well, then write it." And he said, "I don't have time for that. You know I don't have time for that." And I said, "Okay, I know you don't have time for it." But he said, and he took the paper and he threw it on the table and he said, "Just write it any way you want to." And just a short few days later, Randy was with the Lord. And so I wrote the book the way I wanted to. And so it is the story of Randy. He was adopted when he was 3 days old and never wanted to know his story until one of our daughters got sick, and it opened the door for him to find out the rest of his story. Part of the story is that he was not the product of two teenagers in the backseat of a car. He was the product of a medical doctor and an administrative assistant who had an affair while they were working at a hospital in upstate New York. And this is the story about finding his birth family and sharing Christ with them. And if you are an adoptee, if you're an adoptive parent, or if you are a person who is thinking of adoption, or if you just need to know that God has his hand on your life, you need to read this book. There are copies over here. Where's the girl that's handling the table? There she is over there. She's handling the table, cash, check, card, whatever. There's also a couple other little ditties over there that you can get. So most of you came tonight because you wanted to have fun, right? You've had fun. What a great night it's been. Pastor Jennifer and Miss Margaret, or Pastor Margaret. Are you a pastor? Miss. You're Miss Margaret. Okay. They have done a great job. Ashley, where are you? There you are. wow, what a great ministry you have. And it's just been great all the way around. I've enjoyed my time here, and I hope that you've enjoyed your evening tonight. And we're going to bring it down just a little bit. But you came tonight because the theme was all things new, making all things new, and you want to find out what can be made new, and you wanted to have fun with each other. And Colleen, you're pretty special. I don't know if she left this up here for me or not, but there it is. So I like new things. I like new clothes. I like new cars. I like new friends, new relationships. But I also like old things. I like old friends. I love antiques. I like old furniture, old cars. I like old people. I like all kinds of things. But the problem with new things and with God making all things new is that sometimes, most of the time, when we talk about having new things and God making all things new, there are changes and adjustments that have to come in our lives. I don't always love change. In fact, I drag my feet a lot of times when we start talking about change. Some changes are good. Painting the house, changing the furniture around, trying new foods, meeting new people. Some of those things are good. The problem with making all things new is that new things often start with an ending. Have you ever thought about that? Let me say that again. New things often start with something that ends. And we don't always want to embrace the ending embrace the change because we know that the ending may have happened. I love words. I love to listen to them. I love to watch them. I love to learn new words. And I love prefixes and suffixes. And I'm dating myself because I don't think they even call them that anymore. But the prefix RE means again. And so when we talk about root words and we talk about new things, I'm going to give you 6 words tonight that I want you to remember. And all of them start with RE, and it means again. So I'm going to give you these words, and it's all talking about making all things new. So the first word I want to give you is recreation. Now you have to put a dash between the E and the C, or it's recreation, okay? So recreation, all right? Recreation. Now this means making all things new. New beginnings start with change. Fear of the unknown, people don't like that. Most people don't like change. It's my seat. It's my parking place. It's my grocery store. This is a big one. My side of the bed. My side of the bed. Don't you go into a motel room and get on my side of the bed. That's my side of the bed. It's got to stay that way. But we have to sometimes recreate things. And in order for things to be made new, there must be changes that happen in our lives. In my home, before Randy died, we were always adding people to our family, our table, our dynamics. We were all about doing that. We wanted. Randy always said, "The more the merrier." It was always a party. He wanted lots and lots of people around, and we didn't like the idea of taking anything away from our family. We didn't like that at all. But you know what? As life changes, sometimes these things happen. People start getting taken away. My timeline is like this. In 2009, my oldest daughter got married. She had the wedding of the century. You could probably ask Jennifer or Margaret, either one, about it, and they would tell you about this wedding of the century. I'm not going to go into all the details, but one of our staff wives called me, and she said, if Jordan Valimont calls me one more time and says, I have another idea, I'm going to pull my hair out. And I said, okay, just relax just a little bit. So we added Chris to our family in 2009. Just a short time later, in 2014, my brother-in-law, Steve, had a massive heart attack and died. Didn't expect that. He was my age. In 2015, Jordan's husband, Chris, left. He left her, he left their 4-year-old daughter, and he never came back. He went back into drug addiction. He later filed for divorce. In 2016, my dad died. just had a massive heart attack and died. He had been sick for a long time, so we knew that eventually that might come, but he passed away. In 2018, as Miss Jennifer mentioned earlier, my baby sister, she was 10 years younger than me, developed pancreatic cancer, and she was gone in 8 months. She had 5 kids. 2 were still minors, and they moved in with me. I raised 3 daughters. Do you feel my pain? First time I did their laundry, I looked in the bottom of the washing machine. There was a paper clip. There was a bolt. There was a screw. There was grass. How do you get grass in your pockets? There was money. And, you know, I'm into money laundering, okay? I'm into it really well. And I just looked at it and I said, what is this? And Alden looked at me. He said, oh, you don't clean out pockets before you do laundry? And I said, no, you clean out pockets before you put it in the laundry. So I had a learning curve because I'd never raised boys. And so, you know, life began to change again as we adjusted to having boys in our home. I found out that I can't go around in jammies when you have 2 teenage boys in the house. And, you know, with jammies, there are certain other things that are not worn. And so I found out really quick that I couldn't do that. Then in 2019, my husband went in for a routine surgery. Came home, developed a complication, went back, and 4 days later, he was with the Lord. Massive, 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 gross medical negligence. And he left our family reeling. He left a church and a city reeling. And change happened. It happened just unbelievably quick. Then in 2021, I moved my mother in with me. She's 89 this year. She'll be 89. And once again, my life changed. So God was recreating things, not just in our family. He was, you know, he allowed things to be taken away, but he also added things in. So recreation happens. There are timelines. We learn to adjust and allow the Holy Spirit to recreate in us. I found that we are always on a journey to adjust and recreate. We don't look the same as we looked 5 years ago. We don't act the same as we acted. So hopefully it's better. Hopefully we're learning more about living and working for the Lord. But, you know, there are ways that we have to adjust as we are in life and on this journey for the Lord. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 9 says, and there is nothing new under the sun. I have found there is nothing new under the sun. There are new ways that I have to look at things as God recreates in me. But there's nothing. We know that nothing stays the same, but there's also nothing new. The second word I want to give you is reuse. Reuse. Have any of you ever heard of upcycling? Somebody mentioned Pinterest earlier. Okay, I'm so sick of looking at Pinterest projects. You know, oh, you can take this bucket that was so thrown away and it's dirty, and you can take it home and you can spend 5 hours cleaning it, and then another 10 hours painting it, and then sanding it down because you used the wrong paint, and then you can put a pad on the top of it and adjust it, and you have a chair to sit on. And I'm going, I will go to TJ Maxx and buy a chair, okay? But it's a big thing right now to upcycle. There's nothing wrong with upcycling, and there's nothing wrong with reusing. It's just something that people do to create a product of higher quality or higher value than the original. Making things new. It may mean cutting things apart. It may mean sanding things down. It may be changing. It may even be death. It may be something that happens in our lives so that God can reuse us, so that he can upcycle us. The night Randy died, I went home. We were all in the room with him and had no idea that he was dying. None. And he just was there, and then he wasn't. And I went home after we left the hospital, and I thought, what do I do now? I'm a pastor's wife. What do I do now? I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I did fill in the gaps. I always told Randy, I said, You dream the dreams, I'll be the facilitator, okay? That's the way we worked. You know, he would dream the dreams, and I would say, okay, we can't do it this way, but we can do it this way. So, that was my job in life, is to make his dreams happen. But I didn't know. How could I be a facilitator if I couldn't be the one who took care of his dreams and his plans? 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. You see, God doesn't just throw away people, and he doesn't throw away our lives just because a tragedy has happened to us. He takes those things and he reuses them. Do you know there's a scripture that says, all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. That's what God does. He will reuse those things that have happened to us, the heartache, the pain, the difficulty. He will reuse those in our lives. For why? For his glory. Not for our own glory, but for his glory. The fourth word I want to give you is reproduce. I am not going to reproduce any more children. I just want to tell you that. I have done my duty. I'm not going to do that. But death brings reproduction and new beginnings. You know, we have plants all over the place. Do you know in order for a plant to reproduce, the seed has to die? It has to be put in the soil, and it has to die. In order for a pearl to be made, there has to be a foreign object placed in the shell of that, what is it, a clam? An oyster. I knew that. In that oyster, and then the oyster begins to cover it with something that will help it to not hurt. And that pearl is produced. And so pain and heartache and death can produce something. It can reproduce something in all of us. If God is going to do something new in you, you must first die to yourself. I'm going to say that again. Don't know if you heard me. In order for God to do something new in you, you must first die to yourself. You must first decide, okay, I don't like where I am right now, but because I don't like where I am, that does not mean I'm going to quit. But I'm going to allow God to take over every area of my life, and I'm going to allow him to do what he needs to do in me. That may mean that you have to put away the idea of what you wanted to do. That may mean that your plans need to change. That may mean that you have to let go of your children to do what God has called them to do. It may mean anything in your life, but something in you may have to die before God can do what he needs to do. We had an amazing professor at, Randy and I both graduated from Southeastern University in Lakeland, Florida. And his name was Crandall Miller. I don't know if any of you ever went to Southeastern, if you ever heard of Crandall Miller or not, but every day he taught first aid. Every day. And I still can't figure out what this had to do with first aid. But we'd come into the class and he'd say, okay, students, open up your books, chapter 2. What you feed grows and what you starve dies. What does this have to do with chapter 2? I don't see this in there. It had nothing to do with it. But he said every single class, every single day, he would make that statement, what you feed grows, what you starve dies. And ladies, there are things that you may be feeding into your spirit that does not need to be there. You need to start starving that thing that is in you so that it will die. Now, I'm not talking about your devotions, okay? You got to feed those. You got to feed your spirit. But there are things in your life. Don't you get tired? I get so tired of people saying, I just say what I think. No. You cut that stuff off. You don't say what you think, because when you say what you think, and Facebook, oh my Lord, Facebook. Use it as a tool. Don't let it use you. You use it to have fun, but not at somebody else's expense. You don't feed that thing. You don't feed the wrong and the sin in your life. You don't feed the things that God has told us to starve. You are to starve the things that are not good in your life and to allow the Holy Spirit to grow in your life. And that part was free. That was not even in my notes. Isaiah chapter 43, verses 18 and 19 says, the former things, forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I'm doing a new thing. I could, you know what? If I wanted to, I could lay down in my bed and never get up. But I have got to forget the former things. I have got to allow the Lord to do the new thing in my life. I never wanted to travel and speak. But you know what? I told the Lord after Randy died, okay, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever it is, whatever door you open up, Lord, I'll walk through it. And God may be opening doors for you that you don't even realize what He's doing. So forget the former things and press forward to the things that God wants to do in your life. The fourth word is renew. During the change, the death, the process of making things new, we must always also learn to submit to the will of God and remain planted or steadfast. You cannot keep digging up a seed to see how it's growing. You cannot keep digging up a seed to see how it is growing. You have to leave it alone while it's in the reproduction stage. You have to. You have to. Have you ever said, well, that flower is not coming up very fast. Let me just see what's going on. And you dig it up and you go, oh, it did have some green on it. I thought that seed was not gonna give me any new flowers. But you've ruined it by digging it up. And sometimes we have to leave, all the time, we have to leave things alone as they're in the growth stage. Psalm 51 verse 10 says, create in me a clean heart and renew a steadfast spirit in me. So as God is trying to renew things in your heart and renew things in your spirit, allow Him to do it. Number 5, recycle. I don't know God's plans, but I know that He restores time. He bestows new identities and He creates new life and recreates new life. He offers renewed mercy to His own every single day. Jeremiah 29:11 says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. God may be trying to recycle some things in your life. He may be trying to bring some things into being in your heart and in your spirit. He may be trying to make all things new. He may be trying to give you a new perspective on the old things that have happened, on the pain and the heartache that you have experienced. You may not ever have all the answers. It's been 3 years since Randy passed away. I still don't know why God allowed it to happen. I still don't. Sometimes I lay in the bed at night and I think, God, why did this happen? Why am I here? Why? Any of you ever have that? You go through something and you go, this makes no sense. There's no understanding for it. But I have to trust that God is going to do something, that He is trying to recycle something in me. The 6th word is this, repurpose. Ooh, repurpose. I love that word. It isn't over. It's not over. I have a friend that says, his name's Scott Cresswell. One of his favorite phrases that he says right now is, the days are not all in. Let me just say that again. The days are not all in. We don't know what God's plans may be for the future. We don't know everything He's going to do, and we don't know why He did what He did in the past. But I do know the days are not all in. I do know that God has a purpose, and He has a repurpose. I thought I had a plan. He laughed. My plan, my purpose, everything that I thought was going to happen in my life changed the night that Randy died. It changed. Just I did a 180. And At some point in time, I'm going to finish the 180, and it'll be a 360, and I'll be back where I started again. But I know that God has a plan. I know that his purpose is going to be fulfilled. You know, there's not a woman in the Bible that didn't have difficulty in her life. And I love the Bible because it's full of real people. You know that, right? Y'all read the Bible, right? You hear the stories. I'm sure Pastor Chad tells you some great stories about people of the Bible. Well, I love the women in the Bible because they're pretty amazing. But there was nothing that happened in their lives that God just stood back and said, oh, they have messed up big time. What am I going to do with this? He never did that. He never did that. He always was able to repurpose the plan that they had or that he had for their lives. There may have been, you know, sometimes we look at life as a journey and we think, oh, okay, you know, I'm going to go from point A to point B. That's not the way it works. We go from point A, and then we go to point B, and then we go into point C, and then we go back to point A, and then we go to point F, and then before too long we may be at Z, and then God says, nope, go back over here to A. So life is a journey, and it's full of squiggly lines and dips and turns, and the women in the Bible faced those very same things. Eve. Oh, any of you ever want to talk to Eve when you get to heaven? She messed up. In fact, she messed up so bad that she messed all of us up. I am sure that before Eve was born, there was no such thing as a monthly, or before Eve sinned, there was no such thing as a monthly cycle. I'm sure there was not. I'm sure there was no such thing as pain in childbirth. But she listened to a serpent. She was deceived, but she sinned, and she cursed all of mankind with what she did. Poor Eve. There's probably a long line. Ruth, another wonderful woman in the Bible. Ruth lost her husband, and then she decided she was going to move with her mother-in-law to a new land, and she met Boaz. God gave her Boaz, and he was a wonderful man. And you know what? She became the ancestor of Christ. Esther was put in a harem. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had lost my parents and been raised by an uncle, and then I was put into a harem, and I was not going to be the only wife, I would not have been very happy. But Esther was placed in that harem for such a time as this. And she found out that God had a plan. Even though she suffered the loss of her parents and the heartache and the pain of being taken away from her uncle and put in this harem, she became queen. And she saved a nation as a result of it. Sarah. She was barren. She was mocked by her sister. But she eventually gave birth to a son, and she gave him to a priest. Now, if God had given me a child, I don't know that I would have given him to the church. I just don't know that I would have. But she did. And she did it gladly. And you know what? God blessed her with more children. And then there was Hannah. She was a slave. She was not loved, and she was used as a pawn to manipulate God's plan, but she gave birth to a nation because it was God's promise. Bathsheba took a bath, tempted a king, but she became the Proverbs 31 woman. The woman at the well was a hoe. But one day, in her hoe-ness, she went to get some water because I'm sure she had to cook. It's another one of the curses. But she met Jesus at a well, and he changed her life just because she met him. And then there was the woman with the issue of blood. She was on her period for years. Years. She was on her period. But she decided she would take a step of faith, and she reached out and she touched the hem of Jesus' garment, and she was instantly healed. You see, the gospel brings changes. It brings new life, but it also brings changes. It isn't easy, but it's appointed. And all of these women, and these are just a few of the many, many, many women who are mentioned in the Bible. And you know what? You're one of the many women who may have faced heartache and turmoil and trauma and drama and rejection and pain and difficulty in your life. But I want you to know that God can take every single little thing that has happened in your life to bring you difficulty. He can take that. He can recycle it. He can repurpose it. He can change it. He can use it for His glory. Revelation 21 verses 3 through 5 from the Message says, I heard a voice, thunder from the throne. Look, look. God has moved into the neighborhood, making His home with men and women. They are His people. He's their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death is gone for good. Tears gone, crying gone, pain gone. All the first order of things are gone. The enthroned continue. Look, I'm making everything new. Write it all down. Each word is dependable and accurate. That means it is trustworthy and true. You probably don't know what God is doing in your life right now. You may be here and you may be thinking, oh, I thought this was going to be all fun and games. No. You got to have an encounter with Jesus when you come to church. And I don't know what God's doing in your life. You don't know what God's doing in mine. And I don't know what He's doing in mine either. But I do know He's doing something. I do know that there are changes that are coming. They're underway. And there may be changes coming in your life, changes that you're embracing. Maybe there's some changes you're saying, I don't want this to happen. I don't want it to happen. I can't handle this. I've done enough. I can't handle anything else, Lord. I just, you just go on to somebody else right now. But God has a plan. It's about time for us to submit to the will of our Father. It's about time for us to submit. It's about time to stop dragging your feet. It's about time to stop planting yourself in the sand and refusing to go where you're being led. When God opens a door, walk through it. Do not allow fear to keep you from being recreated, to keep you from being reused, to keep you from being reproduced, renewed, or repurposed, because God has a plan. He always has a plan. He always has a purpose. And I want to challenge you right now, ladies. We're not going to take time to, everybody come up here and all that sort of thing. Although if you want to, I'm sure the pastoral staff would be glad to pray with you. But turn around to your table and look at your hostess and let them know what's going on in your life. Let them know what it is that you're struggling with. Are you struggling with being repurposed? Are you struggling with being renewed? Are you struggling with being upcycled? Recycled? Do you feel like God has something that you don't know what He's doing? And give yourselves the opportunity to walk through the door, to allow the Holy Spirit to use you the way that He chooses to, not the way that you choose to be used. Let's go to the Lord. Father, thank you. Thank you, thank you for being here. I sense your presence among us right now. I know you're moving through each and every corridor in this body of women. I know that you're reminding us of the forgiveness that we need to do, the unforgiveness that's in our heart, the heartache and the pain that we have not released to you. And I know you're doing it, Lord. And I know that you want to make all things new because you want the best for us. You want what needs to happen in our lives. You want it to be done, Lord, not just so that we'll be healthy and whole and fruitful and multiply and win others to you. Lord, you want it for your glory. You want it to be for your glory and for us to be 100% ready to meet you when the time comes. And Father, I just ask right now that your peace and your comfort would bring beauty into these ladies' lives when all they thought was ashes, all they thought they had was heartache and pain. Lord, bring the beauty into them. In your precious name.